Good morning. Welcome to your program, Your Agenda, here on Cignal TV, One News, channels 8 and 250. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and in case you've noticed or you're wondering, well, we are in Lipa City, Batangas, in our small garden here, and we are glad to welcome you to the week. And it's November 2023, Monday, the start of a great week, a new week, a busy week. And I do hope that you are all healthy, positive, and grateful. Like I am grateful to all of you who are Cignal TV subscribers, to all of you who follow us on Facebook, and of course, those who watch us via YouTube, pati na rin yung mga nagli-link in. So, thank you and please keep it up and kindly spread the word. And I do hope you'd also follow me on in my columns in the Philippine Star, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And today we are going to have a very important conversation. It's very important. You might be thinking, bakit puro health ang fino-focus ni Kuya Cito? Well, here's the deal. Everyone talks about the high cost of medicine. Everyone talks about problems in hospitalization with medical procedures, etc. But no one is talking about healthy living or preventive, okay? Preventive healthy lifestyle. Kasi ang nangyayari po, pupunta na kayo lang sa doktor pag may tama na. This month, if I'm not mistaken, if I didn't get my data mixed up, we are observing Diabetes Month or maybe even this week, Diabetes Week. And it is not to celebrate all of you who have diabetes, but to warn the many young people, the adults who don't have diabetes but have a high probability of becoming patients, diabetic patients. Hindi po biro, it's a very serious concern among physicians, and we will discuss that because through the years, I myself, thank God, praise God, I don't have diabetes. I have other problems, but not diabetes. And I have been talking to diabetic people, patients, and there are new developments. Before, tusok-tusok, hindi po the fishball, tusok-tusok the finger to find out whether you have the high sugar or low sugar, etc. And then there was this new development, or well, it's many years already, this pack, this insulin injection pack that monitors your blood sugar, your status, and then automatically injects you. In fact, a couple of my friends have it. I think even Gary Valenciano has it. A friend of mine, Emil, tells me he can swim with it. I don't know how true that is. But, and then some people have told me about patches. A friend of mine puts on a patch on her upper arm, and then it is connected to her cell phone, and she can monitor her sugar levels before and after meals. So it's helped her a lot. And then another friend has talked to me about basmati rice. So we're going to discuss all of this, plus the beginnings of diabetes, who are the candidates, and of course, what's out there. So we're going to focus on diabetes month, I think. And before we do all of that, let's go to our usual process, reading our daily starter, which is shared to us by the well-known author and thought leader, John Maxwell. And today's daily starter is, there's always an answer, and usually there's more than one. whether it is mathematics, whether it is arithmetic, whether it is logic, whether it is culinary issues, all problems have an answer. And John Maxwell tells us usually there's more than one. There are a lot of people who are going through life now saying, I can't do a lot of things because I don't have money. And that's the end for them. But the thing is, in order to travel, let's say, or buy things or get things, there are ways, there are answers to that problem. And some people are able to travel by selling off things they don't need. I have someone who can sell an ice block to an Eskimo, sabi nga nila, because she's so good at selling stuff that most people don't want. They're just throwing them away. She'll pick it up and sell it. And before you know it, she has enough money to buy rice and a sack of rice, which she then sells for a little profit. And after several years, she now has a business selling rice. And there are people, me for instance, I can't afford a lot of things, but I trade. I like to trade things. And my rule is good, better, or best. So going back to our daily starter, there is always an answer, and usually there is more than one. So please, if you have a problem, if you have a dilemma, if you are stumped, then remember that and try to figure it out. Kung ano ba yung sinasabi ni John Maxwell, laging may solusyon. Totoo, laging may solusyon, and kadalasan maraming paraan. That's where Filipinos are great. Humahanap ng paraan. Let's now go to the front page of the Philippine Star, November 20, 2023. And the headline is, Pinoy fishers to sail back to Panatag Shoal. Filipino fisher folk will sail again to Panatag or Scarborough Shoal to determine if the supposed meeting between President Marcos and Chinese President Xi Jinping in San Francisco, California over the weekend will result in an improved situation in the area amid the harassment of Chinese Coast Guard and militia, according to a fishers group. The question is, meron na bang kasunduan, pinag-usapan? Because as far as we recall, it was said after the meeting that more talks have to take place. Ito pong attempt na ito to go there on their own without guidance from the national government might be pushing the wrong buttons too soon. So careful lang po, because some people medyo ang sabi nila, adelantado, presumido. Okay, baka mamaya magkabarilan dyan. Anyway, at the top of the front page, DHSUD or Department of Human Settlements and activates shelter team in quake-hit areas. After that 6.7 or 6.8 magnitude earthquake in Sarangani, the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development is now activating emergency shelters. Kailangan po yan, especially here in Metro Manila. The question is, in the event of a mega earthquake, do we actually have such facilities? Do we even have routes that we are certain would not be blocked by collapsed buildings, power lines, etc.? Meanwhile, to the left of the front page, top part, we have a photo of Miss Nicaragua, Shanice Palacios, waving after being crowned Miss Universe 2023 in San Salvador, El Salvador. The Philippines' Michelle D. right photo was among the 10 finalist stories on page 3 and 11. And kung pakikinggan nyo, paniniwalaan nyo yung mga naglalabasan sa social media, Michelle D. raw made it to the top 5 for about 10 seconds. Kayo na lang ang mag-imbestiga. Ayokong mag-insinuate. Yun po yung Marites, Marites at Lito Balita. Meanwhile, 9,000 cops deployed for transport strike. Just in case you forgot, there is a transport strike and around 9,000 police personnel and 920 mobility assets will be deployed for the transport strike according to the Philippine National Police. Kasi ang pong piston, magta-transport strike na naman over an issue that has been talked about for more than 20, 30 years, yung modernization. Dati na kayong hari ng daan, hindi na po kayo pwedeng maghari-harian. Magbago na tayo sa ikauunlad ng bayan. Meanwhile, Quezon City prosecutor to resolve grave threat case versus Rodi If. Okay, kasi sabi raw po ni PRRD President Rodrigo Duterte, magapakulong na lang siya, okay, rather than respond to the allegations of the Makabayan Bloc and the case of grave threat filed against him. But the statement or this news item is a opinion reflected by one of the parties. So let us not expound on that kasi medyo ano po yan kanilang idea yan. Center photo of the Philippine Star. They're back. Photo of President Marcos meeting the Filipino community yesterday in Honolulu, Hawaii, where he and his family were exiled 3 decades ago. With him are Speaker Martin Romualdez, First Lady Lisa Araneta Marcos, and Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo. And if I'm not mistaken, to the left side of that photo, you can partly see Babes Romualdez of the Philippine Star. But the Marcos in Hawaii for final leg of US trip. Okay? So, parang ano yan I don't know if you would call it a sentimental journey or a traumatic reminder, okay, of what happened to them more than 30 years ago. Meanwhile, Speaker, okay, meaning Speaker Martin Romualdez claims relations with Sara very good, quote unquote, very good. Question is, for whom? Okay, when asked by the media, the speaker said his relations with Vice President Sara Duterte are very good. And when asked, Vice President said she is okay. She believes that she still has the trust and confidence of President Bongbong Marcos and that she has no intentions now of running for president. Okay, so ayan na. And it's interesting how this thing is developing, parang cat and mouse game or playing chicken. Kumbaga, sino unang pipikit o kukurap. Anyway, Mega World to file multi-billion peso lawsuit versus Datem. Real estate giant Mega World yesterday announced that it will file a multi-billion peso lawsuit against the construction firm Datem Inc. for alleged gross negligence and abandoning its commitment to finish several projects. Okay, so that is the side of Mega World. Datem, on the other hand, is claiming that Mega World owes them hundreds of millions in unpaid collectibles. So, bahala na. Dun ka na sa presinto mag-explain, as the saying goes. Meanwhile, whimsical garden in the city Philinvest City in Alabang, Muntinlupa has transformed its expansive Central Park into a whimsical garden with Our Time to Shine Christmas campaign. Parang after magbukasan ng Christmas tree at Christmas lights yung mga ibang developments, Philinvest is now saying, kami naman. Okay, and that's all the news we have from the Philippine Star today, November 20, 2023. And I have a column, an article in the opinion page of the Philippine Star. If you would, please read and share the article. And also, please subscribe also to the Philippine Star. We'll go for a quick break. When we return, usapang hindi asukal matamis na mapait, diabetes. We'll be right back here on Agenda.
Did you know that 1 in 14 adult Filipinos is living with diabetes? Health experts fear that the number of Filipinos with diabetes will increase from 3.9 million in 2019 to 7.2 million in 2045. Diabetes is still one of the leading causes of death in the country, only after heart disease, stroke, and cancer. If you frequently pee, always feeling thirsty, hungry, and tired, experiencing blurry vision, and have a wound that does not heal immediately, then maybe it's time to go to your doctor to see if you have diabetes. How can we prevent getting this disease? And if ever we're diagnosed with diabetes, how should we deal with this? Let's discuss this on today's Agenda.
Dr. Juan Maria Ibarra Co is an endocrinologist and a regent at the Philippine College of Physicians. He is also the chairman of the Department of Medicine at the University of the East Ramon Magsaysay Memorial Medical Center. Dr. Co is also a fellow at the Philippine College of Endocrinology, Diabetes, and Metabolism.
Good morning, Dr. Co. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning, Sir Cito. Thank you for having me.
Okay, did I get it right? We're supposed to be celebrating Diabetes Month. Is it in October or is it in November?
November is Diabetes Awareness Month. That's correct.
Okay. And how are you in your organizations or the society or in the College of Physicians celebrating or observing Diabetes Month? Because I don't know, do we even have cause for celebration given the rising numbers of Filipinos who are coming down with diabetes?
Of course, we always do our awareness programs. It's our intention really to have this advocacy, increasing awareness, teaching people about diabetes, the harms, the consequences of uncontrolled diabetes. And as mentioned earlier, one of the leading causes of death in the Philippines, the fourth, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really just increasing awareness, letting people know what diabetes is, who should be screened for diabetes, and what to do if you do have diabetes.
You know, I don't want to be morbid, Doc JM, but, medyo baka sabihin naman itong si Kuya Cito nananakot, no? But, everybody talks about who might get diabetes, which we'll get into in a while, or how to avoid, blah, blah, blah. But nobody really talks about how it is to die from diabetic, conditions. Kasi we always hear about, people in dialysis. But I know it might not be aligned with you as a physician, but could you share what you have seen in the hospitals of how people die with people with diabetes? How do they actually die?
Okay, the leading cause of people with diabetes is cardiovascular death. So they either die from heart attacks or strokes. But other people can also die from renal failure. So the problem with diabetes is the high blood sugar, and that extra sugar in the blood is slowly destroying our different organs. We know diabetics have a higher risk of heart attacks and strokes because blood vessels in the heart and brain get clogged up. We know blood vessels in the legs also get clogged up. So diabetics tend to have poor wound healing in the later stages of the disease. It's also the leading cause of non-traumatic amputations.
Okay, let's slow that down a little. So the first is stroke and heart attack. Why do diabetic people suffer from stroke and heart attack and die from that?
Okay, so the problem with diabetes is that extra sugar in the blood causes inflammation in the blood vessels, mainly of the heart and in the brain. And that inflammation can cause this plaques that block the flow of blood into the heart muscle or into the brain. So patients get these heart attacks at a much younger age than patients without diabetes. They also get these strokes at a much younger age compared to patients who do not have diabetes.
Okay, when you say sugar in the blood, we're not talking sugar that we buy by the kilo.
Yeah, so the problem with diabetes is that it's a disease where the body cannot handle sugar properly. Normally, when we eat carbohydrates like rice or pasta or bread, it becomes sugar in our stomach and our intestines and then enters the bloodstream. From the blood, dapat pumasok na siya sa muscles, sa liver, sa kidneys, and the different organs. But in a diabetic patient, that sugar cannot enter the different cells and tissues of the body. It just remains in the bloodstream. So, ikot lang ng ikot yung asukal sa dugo. And the result is high blood sugar.
Yun. So, yung sinasabi nilang, nako, bawasan mo yung kanin mo or reduce your rice, your pasta, yung spaghetti na gustong-gusto ng mga Pilipino or mga tinapay or breads, mga pandikoko, etc. Those are labeled, classified, bear with me, we need to do this, as carbohydrates. And you take that in as carbohydrates. But if you don't burn it, hindi ka construction worker, hindi ka katulad ni Beltran na lakad ng lakad sa manukan o sa kanyang sa kanyang garden, yung carbohydrate na yun, it becomes sugar. Correct?
Actually, when we take in carbohydrates, sa intestines pa lang nagiging asukal na siya. Then it enters the bloodstream, where it's supposed to enter our different cells. But in a diabetic patient, because they lack insulin or the insulin is not as effective, that sugar cannot enter the different organs of the body and just remains in the bloodstream. So some diabetic patients, even if
Yeah.
they exercise, they still cannot burn that sugar because the sugar is not entering the muscles or the different organs. Andun lang siya sa
So,
dugo.
yeah, so in other words, it's not the simple case of dami mong kinain, mag-workout ka, okay ka na. It's not that simple. If you have ano ba yun, early stage diabetes, etc., then the safe option is to just really reduce your carbohydrate intake. Is that correct?
Our current recommendation is we completely eliminate simple sugars. Yun yung mga sweet. Cakes, pastries, ice cream, chocolate, kahit yung mga leche flan, halo-halo. Sugar-sweetened beverages lalo na. But we can still take carbohydrates, but we prefer the more complex carbohydrates. So the ones that are higher in fiber. For example, instead of white rice, baka pwedeng sinabi nyo basmati rice or brown rice, red rice. Instead of white bread, wheat bread. Eat a lot of the green leafy vegetables which are high in fiber and choose fruits that are high in fiber. But we don't recommend that you completely eliminate carbohydrates from your diet at this time.
Okay, I mentioned it and you repeated it, basmati rice. Kasi, alam mo, yung mga kaibigan ko sosyal, sinasabi nila sa akin yan, Kuyang, wag ka nang mag-red rice or mag-black rice, mahal pa yan, basmati rice na lang. But does it really help, basmati rice? Because they say it doesn't affect the sugar.
Okay, so it's still carbohydrate. It can still be absorbed in the form of sugars, but because of the fiber content of basmati rice, some of that sugar is actually blocked in absorption by the fiber in that basmati rice. So it might be a better option than white rice, yes. And it does have some vitamins that might also be helpful.
Okay, so the carbohydrate, the sugar that gets into the bloodstream, a diabetic person, there are just basically not naturally born diabetics, correct?
Okay, yes. So there are a lot of risk factors that go into the development of diabetes, including age or genetics. Hypertension is a risk factor as well. The ones that are controllable are the being sedentary or not having exercise and being overweight and obese. These are the risk factors that are hopefully controllable so that we can avoid getting diabetes later on. There's some data also to say that smoking is associated with a higher risk of diabetes. And surprisingly, poor dental health is also associated with having a higher risk of developing diabetes.
Can you explain that? That's the first time I've heard poor dental health associated with diabetes.
Okay, so it's an inflammatory condition. There you have a lot of cavities, there's bacteria in the mouth. That inflammation can translate to metabolic problems that later on lead to a higher risk of developing diabetes. Something new, no? Although not that well established, there's a lot of data coming out now that we really need to visit our dentist regularly to make sure we have good oral health because that will also increase our risk of developing diabetes.
Why? I'm sorry, I missed that. What's the connection?
Okay, diabetes is a metabolic disease and inflammation that's associated in the mouth can be translated to inflammation in the blood, which can lead to all these factors, medyo biochemical or molecular, that will lead to the development of insulin resistance and thus later on diabetes.
Ayun. So, wala nang maraming usapan pa. Basta magsipilyo, magmumog ng maigi, gumamit ng asin kung kailangan, and that will help reduce the development of diabetes. Now, going back to my initial question, because I want people to understand that diabetes is not a simple matter of, I'll just take my medicine or I'll count my blood sugar and I will exercise. Because people seem to have simplified the disease. And I'm correct, right? It is a disease.
Yes, it is a disease.
Okay, now, so you said stroke, heart attacks. Now, what are the other causes of death for diabetic person? I mean, may mga yung nabanggit mo, organ failure or renal failure. Could you explain this, please, Doc?
Okay, so we also know that diabetes is the number one cause of kidney failure. Kaya ang daming dialysis centers na lumalabas ngayon because there's so many diabetics who have not controlled their diabetes and now have gotten kidney disease. And kidney disease is also another cause of death among patients with diabetes. We also know that diabetic patients have higher risk of infection. Nakita natin yan ng COVID, no? Yung mga diabetic patients got COVID easier. And when they did get COVID, they got a more severe form of COVID.
So,
Diabetes affects the immune system so that it can't battle viruses and bacteria as well.
so mas sakitin sila aside from being diabetic if they don't watch it, if they're what are the triggers? Because I mean, as we said, that there are people who are genetically predisposed to diabetes, but what are the triggers for these people to become for their immune system to go down and be susceptible to other opportunistic diseases?
Okay, so when your blood sugars are high, the immune system does not work as well. So it's easier to get infections like viruses, bacteria, even tuberculosis, or even fungal infections. We see a lot
Wow.
of diabetic patients getting admitted for pneumonia. A lot of them get diabetic foot wounds. A lot of them got skin infections. So they're really prone to infections, and these infections can kill these patients with diabetes.
Okay, so but what are kidney failure number one. So you have heart, stroke, then kidney failure. Ano pa yung iba? What are the other areas that diabetes will essentially send you to heaven?
Okay, the infections, a lot of the time, and patients get diabetic foot wounds, they get infected wounds, and they can also die from that one. And we also know diabetes is the number one cause of blindness and nerve damage, although they don't die from the blindness or nerve damage naman. So it's mainly cardiovascular and kidney problems that cause the death and infections, which are the leading
Okay,
causes of death among patients with diabetes.
I personally know someone who lost his limb below the knee from his foot up to his knee. They had to cut it off. Said, sorry, wala nang remedyo dyan. We have to cut it off. But blindness caused by diabetes. I'm scared of losing my eyesight. We are predisposed to glaucoma. But how how does it happen? How would people know na teka mukhang magkakaproblema ako?
Okay, if you have diabetes, it's recommended that you get screened for diabetic eye disease at least once a year. So talk with your doctor or visit an ophthalmologist so they can look into your eye or take a picture of the back of your eye para makita kung may damage na po from the diabetes.
Okay, walang early symptoms because I just helped a schoolgirl who couldn't read when I asked her, "Can you read this?" And she couldn't read. And then when I sent her to an ophthalmologist, an optician actually first, an optician, and then an ophthalmologist, they said that her grade was going from 50 to 400 to 300 to 100 to 50 to whatever. And so we had to send her to the hospital. But with diabetic related eye disease, are there early symptoms?
Blurring of vision generally is the most common symptom. But again, early detection is more important. So we ask patients to see the ophthalmologist once a year, even though they don't have eye symptoms yet.
Yeah, that's a good advice, Doc JM, because but I'm sure you hear this from your patient. Doc, lumalabo matanda yung mata ko, tumatanda na yata ako, and they think just changing glasses fix it, but you should always consider if you're diabetic that it might be related. But is it preventable? Blindness caused by diabetes?
Okay, many of the complications of diabetes can be prevented with good sugar control. So all these complications we mentioned, the heart attack, the stroke, the kidney failure, the blindness, the nerve damage, the infections, if you can get your sugars controlled, then you can live a long life that is free of complications of diabetes, as long as you control it early in the course of your disease. Yes.
How early is early, Doc JM?
Okay, so once you find out you have diabetes, it's important you control it very early on. As long as you get diagnosed, even if you're asymptomatic, get screened. And once you're diagnosed, make sure you have good control of your sugars for a longer life that is free of diabetes-related complications.
Pasensya na, alam ko medyo lugi ka sa professional P dito sa consultancy na ito, Doc JM. But
No problem.
when we come back, I have so many more questions. We'll just go for a break. And when we return, I really need to ask you more about this early detection, etc. And we'll be right back here on Agenda. Please stay with us.
While there is no exact cure for diabetes, treatment can manage the condition and patients may be able to reach a stage of diabetes remission. One of the ways is through the use of insulin. However, a study conducted by the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology showed that millions of Filipinos are unable to access insulin and routine diabetes care. The Philippines is no stranger to this crisis, with diabetes ranking 4th among the leading causes of death in the country. Many Filipinos seek reprieve from this disease. Unfortunately, fake news about the diabetes cure continue to spread in the country. In fact, the health department had to release a statement to debunk a social media post saying diabetes could be prevented through a certain product sold online, which even used the photo of Health Secretary Ted Herbosa. So what are the proven ways to beat diabetes? Let's discuss that further on today's agenda.
Okay, joining us again, continuing our conversation is Dr. Juan Maria Ibarra Co, aka Doc JM, endocrinologist, Regent Philippine College of Physicians, and Chairman, Department of Medicine, University of the East. Paano na nga ba yun? University of the East. Ano na yung Ramon Magsaysay, correct, Doc JM?
Yes, that's correct. UERM University of the East Ramon Memorial Medical Center.
Yeah, okay. Kasi alam mo, allergic ako doon sa term na memorial. Takot na talagang meron akong psychological hang-up when you talk about memorials. Anyway, Doc JM, we were talking about various concerns about diabetes, and you said that in the society or among endocrinologists, you are as concerned about early screening. Ay, ang dami ko nang nakausap. I've talked to so many friends. Pare, okay yung sugar ko. Tiningnan ko yung nagpa-blood test ako within the range. Tapos sabi ko, yung misis ko nun, okay din yung sugar. Biglang nag-gestational diabetes eh. Anong pinagsasabi nyo dyan? So, Doc, you're the expert. Can you talk about early screening, etc.?
Okay, so I know earlier in the video we mentioned that if you have these symptoms such as frequent urination or weight loss, then you might have diabetes. But our emphasis is that even without symptoms, you might have diabetes, especially in the early stages. Pag medyo mataas na yung blood sugar, wala talagang naramdaman yung mga patients. That's why screening of asymptomatic people is very important. Our current recommendations in the Philippines, if you're 40 years old and above, regardless of your risk factors, then you should be screened for diabetes with a fasting blood sugar test. Now, if you're younger than 40 years old, but you're overweight and you have additional risk factors like family history or you're not exercising as much, you have hypertension, then you may want to be screened for diabetes even before the age of 40. But universal screening is recommended starting at the age of 40, whether or not you have symptoms.
Yeah, but Doc JM, what happens? Like I've heard of cases of kids as young as 7 years old, if I'm not mistaken, who were diabetic, and other people have told me that there's also a fast rising concern because of the new lifestyle of these children or these young adults who are into fast food, into high sugars, lalo na itong mga nababaliw sa mga shakes and mga, I don't know what they call them, cha or something na high sugar, mga milk tea raw na high sugar. Please comment on that.
Okay, so for most of the children who do have diabetes, sila yung mga type 1 diabetes, katulad ni Gary Valenciano, as you mentioned. These patients require insulin as the treatment. That's the only treatment for their diabetes. But type 1 diabetes makes up maybe less than 2% of patients with diabetes all over the country. And many more people have type 2 diabetes, which is the more of the adult onset na diabetes. Yes, the increased intake of sugar-sweetened beverages has been associated with a higher risk of developing diabetes and obesity. That's why we worked with Congress to increase taxation of your sugar-sweetened beverages. And yan ang problema namin. No matter how much we increase awareness or educate the Filipinos regarding the risk factors that lead to diabetes, people still do not follow the lifestyle changes we recommend. They're still not eating healthily, they're not exercising regularly, and they're not maintaining proper body weight. So that's leading to increase in obesity and thus later on increasing the chances of getting diabetes later on.
Okay, now what about people who say, Doc, Coke Zero ako. Sorry for the free plug, pero gano'n naman talaga eh. Hindi ako uminom ng regular cola, etc. Is that a credible justification for soft drinks?
Okay, so ako personally, I do not recommend intake of artificial sugars. There's some data to say that people who took in a lot of the artificial sugars, sila pa yung maaga naging obese, sila pa yung maaga naging diabetic. I think the hypothesis here is that your brain gets this rush, that it's expecting a sugar rush, kasi natikman niya may matamis na dumaan sa dila. And then that sugar rush does not come, and the brain makes you crave sugar later on, even more. So ako, I don't recommend artificial sugars for patients with or without diabetes.
When I was doing a project for a weight loss company, one of the things they told me was, whatever you do, please do not eat mangoes because they have high sugar content. So, I just kind of followed the instruction because, it was a part of the arrangement. But is it possible that even natural foods like mangoes or some other very sweet fruits could have a lethal, a very damaging effect in diabetic effect?
So although we ask patients to avoid sugary foods, fruits are generally acceptable but in small amounts. So fruits do have simple sugars, which is fructose, and they are rapidly absorbed through the intestines and can cause spikes in sugar. So generally, we ask patients to limit your fruit intake to around what can fit in the palm of your hand na flat lang. And this is per meal naman.
Kalahating mangga pala yan, Doc JM.
Oo, isang pisngi lang per meal because of that sugar content in the mangoes. But we don't recommend that you eliminate a particular fruit in your diet. Just limit the amount of fruit to what can fit in the palm of your hand, or for some doctors, what fist size of fruit Per meal naman to, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you can have a small serving of fruit.
Ayun, kasi that some people say justify saging lang naman. And I remember a dietitian trainer tell me off because I said, no, I'm natural. All I eat is turon. Yeah, turon with about half a kilo of sugar added into it and the carbohydrate sa wrapper. So we have to be careful about that. Okay, can you explain to us what diabetic shock is? And I'm sure you haven't experienced it, but if you could describe it.
So there are acute diabetic emergencies. These occur when your blood sugars are very high and they can affect the acidity of your blood or the osmolarity of your blood. Medyo technical. So if the
Okay
sugars
lang.
are very high, your brain cannot function properly, your body cannot function properly, you're nauseated, you're vomiting. And these are diabetic emergencies. And these patients have to be admitted in the ICU because there's a potential risk of dying from these diabetic emergencies.
So parang OD, overdose.
Parang ganyan. The sugar is too high in the blood that the different organs cannot function properly.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean,
So,
in my past life, naka-experience na ako na nasosobrahan, like with alcohol or stuff like that. And they call it drunken stupor. You're just totally useless. But with diabetic shock, I've heard that people are practically comatose or like zombies.
okay, so they can go into a diabetic coma because of the very high amounts of sugar in the blood. That sugar in the blood pulls fluid from your brain cells into the blood vessels, so the brain cells get very dehydrated, and you can go into coma and you can die from that diabetic coma. So something to watch out for. The blood
Oh,
sugars are usually more than 600 for these patients.
okay. Now, as far as the testing is concerned, is it possible to determine if you're diabetic or you are candidate for diabetes just by the simple complete blood chemistry test, yung CBC test or blood profile, or ano ba yung difference ng sinasabi mong fasting sugar? A lot of people ask me that. Sabi ko, maat pa ako, malay ko, pakialam ko.
Okay, so the recommended screening test for diabetes is the fasting blood sugar test. So you don't take any food or drink for around 8 to 12 hours overnight, come to the lab in a fasted state, and then they get your blood. That's the recommended test for universal screening. There are other tests like the oral glucose tolerance test where they make you drink sugar and then get your blood test after 2 hours, or the HbA1c, which is an average sugar for the past 3 months. But the easiest test to do is the fasting blood sugar. And it has to be a venous sample. We do not recommend using a glucose meter to screen for diabetes at this time.
Mhm. Okay, let's go for another very quick break this time, Doc JM. And when we return, I'd like to ask you about those patch na nilalagay dito ng kaibigan ko, pinapanood niya sa cellphone niya. And then the ones that I heard Gary uses and another friend of mine uses, yung nasa baywang waistband. It's a automatic monitor and injector. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Please stay with us. Welcome back to your program agenda. And with us this morning is Dr. J.M. Co, also known as Doc Juan Maria Ibarra Co, who is the chairman of the Department of Medicine, UERM MCI, and also a practicing endocrinologist, Regent Philippine College of Physicians. Doc JM, going back to our conversation regarding testing, etc. So we know the profiling, testing, etc. Solutions. A friend of mine, Therese, has this patch on her upper arm, and according to her, that patch communicates with her cell phone, and after every meal tells her whether her food intake was good or bad, etc.
Okay, so for options for glucose monitoring, for checking your blood sugars, you can check your sugar through your finger prick, or the newer devices involve putting a sensor in the back of your arm or in the abdomen. That sensor is checking your blood sugar every minute. Some of these sensors can communicate with your cell phone. Some of them require a reader so that you have to scan your sensor every time you want to know your blood sugars. And you're able to check your sugars without having to do your finger prick anymore. So a lot of patients like it. It even checks your sugar when you're sleeping so that when you wake up, you can scan the device and then see your blood sugars in the early morning hours.
Okay,
And some patients are surprised.
when is it when is your sugar levels of most concern? Late in the evening, when you wake up in the morning, or before meals? Kasi may nagsasabi sa akin that they observe certain spikes at certain hours. Is that imagined, or is that consistent?
Yes, so there are some patients do get spikes at different times of day. There are some patients who wake up with very nice sugars, but once they start to eat, the sugar spikes to very high levels. There are some patients who go to bed, maganda yung sugars, and then in the early morning hours, their sugar spike pala, hindi nila alam because they're unable to check their sugars when they're sleeping. What's more harmful is the after meal blood sugars compared to the before meal. So a lot of patients will check before breakfast. Yung mga after meal blood sugar spikes pala yung mas masama. So that's why it's important we also check our sugars after meals, either through finger prick or through using the sensors.
Yeah, my friend told me dati she would eat chocolate. Parang yun yung kanyang dessert. Sabi niya, I pass on all the other stuff. I just have one piece of small chocolate. Parang yun na lang reward ko for being a good patient. But then when she put on the patch, she got the shock of her life. After taking the chocolate, she saw that the readings just went over the charts, and that scared her.
Okay, so that's why we really recommend that patients stick to their diet and we really try to completely eliminate simple sugars from your diet. And we'll really see it in the sensors. Kaya yan ang maganda sa sensors, you're able to see an immediate response to the food that you eat in terms of how your blood sugar goes up or doesn't go up, hopefully.
Okay, I know, at least I'd like to believe, and seem to me that my blood tests have all come home normal. But there's been a series of tests where my blood sugar was low. Not super, super low, but bumaba. And sabi ng doktor ko, ano lang, you just take some sweet thing when you feel it. But I noticed that, twice now, on unguarded moments, pag bumababa yung sugar na hindi mo nahalata, you get cranky, or I became withdrawn. I was in a party and I was hungry, and I just got, maybe sour, almost depressed. Is that associated with those kind of things, yung low sugar?
Okay, so low sugar symptoms typically involve being very hungry, they get cold sweat, they get these tremors or shakiness. Nakakatawag yung mga patients namin, nagpapalpitate sila, and they feel like parang himatayin ako sa gutom. Crankiness can be a symptom of low blood sugar, yes, also. But if you're not diabetic and you're not taking medications for diabetes, maybe that low sugar is it's not something to be really concerned about. Just take some food. It doesn't have to be sweets naman. Basta may
Yeah, I
carbohydrate.
noticed basta naka isang baso ako ng soft drinks or I take a piece of chocolate, I become my annoying jovial self again to the dismay of my friends. Para ay nako, back to normal na naman si Beltran. But so it's not just high blood sugar, there's also a concern for low blood sugar.
Okay, this is more important in our patients who do have diabetes who are taking medications that may cause low blood sugar, such as insulin or another drug class of diabetes medication.
Okay, now, what about that, sabi nga nila, jetpack, yung side equipment ng mga kaibigan natin, si Gary and all these other guys na, is it really automatic sensor, automatic injection, you can swim with it now, etc.?
Okay, so a lot of patients can be treated with oral medications naman, but some patients with advanced diabetes or type 1 diabetes like Gary V will need insulin, and some of them will have to inject as many times as 4 times a day. So for patients who don't want to inject 4 times a day, there's the option of the insulin pump. Like Gary V does not inject himself 4 times a day anymore. He puts a port on his abdomen. Connected to that port is an insulin pump with a long tubing. That insulin pump is continuously infusing insulin into his body. And every time Gary V needs to eat, he just takes out the insulin pump and tells the pump to inject me with 10 units, for example. The pump is removed when Gary V takes a bath or goes swimming. So you can't go swimming with the pump. You can connect the pump with a continuous glucose monitor and pwede sila mag-usap. So the continuous glucose monitor is checking your blood sugar continuously. If it feels that parang bumabagsak na yata yung blood sugar ni Gary V, the continuous glucose monitor can tell the pump stop injecting insulin muna. Masyadong mababa na yung sugar. Or if Gary V put a dose of 10 units and the sensor noted that parang kulang yata yung 10 units kasi parang ang bilis tumaas ng blood sugar, the sensor can talk to the pump also and tell the pump to adjust the dose accordingly. The technology and all these algorithms that compute sugar and insulin dose are not perfect at this time, but they're working on improving it so that it can become continuously autonomous later on. But it's really big improvement in the past few years with regards to the insulin pump and the continuous glucose monitor. They're calling it the artificial pancreas. So, parang
Artificial
continuous.
pancreas, okay. Okay, now, Doc JM, any final message? We're down to our last minute. I'd like to give you the opportunity to, baka meron ka talagang, pet peeve or serious concern you want to address. Please go right ahead.
Okay, so it's important again that we screen patients for diabetes even though you don't have any symptoms. A lot of patients have high blood sugar already, walang naramdaman talaga, but early sugar control is important if you want to avoid the complications of diabetes, that early stroke, that early heart attack, amputations, infections, nerve damage, blindness. Complications may come 10 to 15 years, but we can delay it as long as we control your blood sugars. Control your blood sugars through combination of diet, exercise, weight loss if you're overweight, stop smoking if you're a smoker, minimize alcohol intake, and take your medications as prescribed regularly. Monitor your blood sugars either through finger prick or a continuous glucose monitor, or getting your laboratory tests regularly and visiting your doctor regularly also. No cheat dates, sana. So do not reward yourself for good behavior by taking in more sweets or sugary foods or not living a healthy lifestyle.
Okay, Doc JM, thank you. That is probably one of the best and yet most informal lecture we've had here on the program, and we do hope that our viewers would take your message to heart. And also, thank you for your time. Thank you for the work you do for the country and for your institution, and as well as even the students of UERM. Thank you. God bless you, Doc.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's Dr. Juan Maria Ibarra Co, or nickname Doc JM, endocrinologist, Regent, Philippine College of Physicians, Chairman, Department of Medicine at UERM MCI. Okay, let's now go to our blessing for the week, or our declaration for the week. And it goes, honesty Honesty has a power that very few people can handle. So please, when you go through this week, remember to be an honest person, but also to be a sensitive person. Because sometimes some people can be so brutally honest, carelessly honest, mindlessly honest. So honesty has a power that few people can handle. It has a power over other people. God bless you this week. And of course, please include Team Agenda in your prayers and kindly keep it here on One News.